The year was 3024, and the galaxy had been quiet for exactly 1,000 years. No human voice had been heard. No human ship had been seen. The race that once called Earth home was gone, wiped out by their own foolishness and wars. Captain Zektar of the Vorthic Empire stood on the bridge of his exploration ship, looking down at the dead world below. Earth spun slowly in space, brown and lifeless. The oceans had dried up long ago. The cities were nothing but ruins covered in dust and sand. It was hard to believe that billions of humans had once lived on this dead rock. "Captain, we are ready." "To begin the mission," said Dr. Yelana, the team's lead scientist. She was a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and large black eyes. Her people, the Zeridians, were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and curiosity about other races. "Good," Zektar replied. "Take us down to the surface. The Galactic Council wants more human artifacts for the museum. They say it helps other species learn from humanity's mistakes." The ship descended through Earth's thin atmosphere. The air was still breathable, but barely. Most of the planet's surface was covered in the ruins of what had once been great cities. New York, London, Tokyo, all reduced to crumbling stone and rusted metal. They landed in what the old human maps called Manhattan. The tall buildings that once reached toward the sky had fallen long ago. Now only their broken foundations remained. Like the bones of some giant creature, Commander Thexus, the mission's security chief, stepped out of the ship first. He was a warrior from the Krillian Dominion, with gray skin and sharp teeth. His people had fought humans in the old days before the Extinction. "Stay close," he warned the others. "Even dead, this place feels wrong." The team walked through the empty streets, their boots crunched on glass and debris. The wind howled through the broken buildings, making strange sounds that almost seemed like voices. Dr. Yelana took readings with her instruments while 2 other scientists collected samples of metal and stone. "The humans built so much," Yelana said, looking around at the ruins, "but they could not learn to live in peace. They poisoned their own world and fought each other until the end." "Their technology was impressive for such a young race," Zektar admitted, "but they were too violent, too greedy. The galaxy is better without them." They had been walking for 2 hours when Dr. Yelana's instruments began to beep loudly. She stopped and looked at the readings with confusion. "This is strange," she said. "I am getting energy readings from below us." "Energy readings?" Thexus asked. "What kind of energy? I do not know. It is not like anything in our databases. The signature is completely unknown." Zektar frowned. "Could it be some old human technology still running?" "Impossible," Yelana replied. "Nothing could still be working after 1,000 years. Besides, this energy pattern is too advanced. It does not match anything humans ever built." They followed the readings to an old subway entrance. The metal stairs were rusted and broken, but still strong enough to hold their weight. They descended into the darkness below the city. Their lights cut through the black tunnels like knives. The deeper they went, the stronger the energy readings became. The tunnels were full of old human things, broken trains, advertisements on the walls, and bones of people who had tried to hide here when their world was dying. "The readings are getting stronger," Yelana reported. "Whatever is down here, it is very powerful." They walked for what felt like hours through the maze of tunnels. Finally, they came to a large chamber that had not been on any of the old human maps. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed with a soft blue light. "These symbols," Yelana whispered. "They are not in any human language I know, but they look familiar somehow." In the center of the chamber stood a tall pillar, made of some unknown metal. It pulsed with energy, sending waves of power through the air. The pillar was definitely not human technology. It was too smooth, too perfect, too advanced. "Captain," Thexus said quietly, "I think we should leave. This place does not feel safe." But Zektar was fascinated. He walked closer to the pillar, ignoring his security chief's warning. "Look at this craftsmanship," he said. "The metal is like nothing I have ever seen. And the energy output is incredible. Dr. Yelena took more readings. Captain, the energy is growing stronger. It has increased by 20% just since we arrived. Growing stronger? Zektar turned to look at her. Why would it be growing? Stronger? Before she could answer, the pillar began to glow brighter. The symbols on the walls started to pulse faster. The air itself seemed to vibrate with power. We need to leave now, Dexys said firmly. Something is happening. They hurried back through the tunnels, following their lights back to the surface. Behind them, the glow from the chamber grew brighter and brighter. By the time they reached their ship, the entire underground area was filled with blue light from space. They could see the light spreading across the surface of Earth. It formed patterns in the ruins of the old cities. At first, the patterns seemed random, but as they watched, the lights began to form shapes. Are those ... numbers? Yelena asked, studying the patterns. Yes, Zektar replied grimly. Human numbers, but arranged in a way that makes no sense. They recorded everything and sent the data back to the Galactic Council. The response came quickly. Send more ships and investigate immediately. The Council was worried. Very worried. Over the next few days, more strange things happened. Ancient monitoring stations that had been silent for centuries suddenly came to life. They began sending coded messages across the galaxy. The messages were in old human languages, but the technology used to send them was far beyond anything humans had ever possessed. Deep space sensors detected massive energy distortions in the void between galaxies. Ships reported strange readings from sectors that had been empty for thousands of years. And on Earth, the energy readings grew stronger every day. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all 12 major species gathered on the great space station that orbited Earth. They had ruled the galaxy peacefully for 1,000 years, ever since the humans had gone extinct. Something is happening, Council Leader Vexmori announced to the Assembly. The energy readings from Earth are now visible from 3 star systems away. And the patterns they form, they are coordinates. Coordinates to where? Asked Ambassador Velissa of the Peaceful Collective. To a location far beyond the edge of our galaxy, Vexmori replied. In the void between galaxies, where nothing should exist, the Assembly fell silent. The void between galaxies was empty space, too far from any star to support life. Nothing could survive there. Nothing could build there. Yet the coordinates pointed directly to that impossible place. Could the humans have somehow survived? Asked War Marshal Drexener of the Krillian Dominion. Could they have escaped to the void? Impossible, Vexmori replied. Our records show clearly that humanity went extinct. We have studied their final years. They were too busy fighting each other to develop space travel advanced enough to reach the void. But doubt was growing. In the minds of the council members, the energy readings, the ancient stations coming to life, the impossible coordinates, it all pointed to one terrifying possibility. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something was stirring. Something that remembered Earth, something that might be coming home. The galaxy had been quiet for 1,000 years, but that silence was about to end. The coordinates from Earth led to a place that should not exist. Admiral Kixandra of the Celestial Union stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the emptiness ahead. Around her, 200 ships from across the galaxy waited in formation. This was the largest fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Council. Are you sure the coordinates are correct? She asked her navigation officer. Yes, Admiral. The energy patterns from Earth all point to this exact location, but our sensors show nothing here. Kixandra was a veteran commander. She had fought in the border wars and explored the furthest reaches of known space. But this mission made her nervous. Something about the empty void felt wrong, like they were being watched by invisible eyes. All ships maintain formation, she ordered. Begin deep space scans. Look for anything unusual. The fleet spread out in a search pattern. Scientists from 12 different species worked together, using every type of sensor technology known to the galaxy. For 3 hours, they found nothing. Just empty space and distant stars. Then everything changed. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, his voice shaking. "You need to see this." On the main screen, something was materializing in the void. It started as a faint shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot ground, but slowly it became solid. A massive structure appeared before them, stretching for thousands of kilometers in every direction. "How big is that thing?" Cassandra asked. "Bigger than our largest space stations," the officer replied. "Bigger than most moons. I have never seen anything like it." The structure was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was made of some unknown metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Strange lights moved across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The design was unlike anything in their databases, yet something about it felt familiar. "Those design elements," whispered Dr. Quentel, the fleet's chief scientist. "They remind me of something. Old human architecture, but evolved far beyond anything they ever built." "That is impossible," Cassandra replied. "Humans have been extinct for 1,000 years. They never had technology like this." But even as she spoke, she felt doubt creeping into her mind. The structure was too perfect to advance. It existed in a place where nothing should be able to survive. And it had appeared in response to signals from Earth. Suddenly, the structure came alive. Brilliant lights raced across its surface. Sections that had seemed solid began to open, revealing massive docking bays. And from those bays, ships began to emerge. The alien fleet watched in stunned silence as hundreds of vessels poured out of the structure. These ships were unlike anything they had ever seen. They moved with impossible grace, seeming to dance through space rather than fly. Their hulls were smooth and seamless, with no visible engines or weapons. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "we are detecting no propulsion systems on those ships." "No engine signatures at all. How are they moving?" "I do not know," Cassandra replied. "Try to contact them." "All frequencies are open. We are broadcasting greetings in every known language." The strange ships continued to approach. They arranged themselves in a formation that seemed both defensive and welcoming. Still, there was no response to the alien fleet's signals. Then, without warning, a voice spoke across all communication channels. It was clear and strong, speaking in perfect galactic standard. But there was something different about it, something that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "We are the descendants of Earth. We have returned home." The words hit the alien fleet like a physical blow. Admiral Cassandra felt her blood turn cold. Around her, the bridge crew stared at each other in shock. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. "This is Admiral Cassandra of the Galactic Council." "Fleet," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Identify yourself." "I am Admiral Lisa Carter, commander of the Terran Exodus Fleet. We speak for humanity." The name meant nothing to the alien databases. There was no record of any human named Lisa Carter, but the voice was definitely human, with the same speech patterns and inflections they had studied in old recordings. "That is impossible," Cassandra said. "Humanity went extinct 1,000 years ago. We have the historical records." "Your records are incomplete," the voice replied. "We never died. We chose a different path." One of the human ships moved closer to the alien fleet. As it approached, the aliens could see its incredible detail. The hull seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and flowed. Strange symbols moved across its surface like writing made of light. "We request permission to board your vessel," Admiral Carter said. "We have much to discuss." Cassandra looked around at her crew. They were all staring at her, waiting for orders. She had two choices: allow the humans aboard and risk the safety of her ship, or refuse and potentially start a war with beings who possessed technology far beyond their own. "Permission granted," she said finally. "But you will be accompanied by armed guards at all times." "That will not be necessary," Carter replied. "But we understand your caution." A small human ship approached the alien flagship. It docked with the main bay without any visible connection. No docking clamps, no airlocks. The ship simply melted Into the hull of the alien vessel as if the metal itself was alive. The airlock opened and 3 figures stepped through. They looked human, but there was something different about them. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Their eyes held an intelligence that seemed to see through everything. The leader was a woman with brown hair and calm blue eyes. She wore a simple uniform that seemed to be made of the same flowing metal as their ships. Behind her came a man with dark skin and silver hair, and another woman with red hair and green eyes. "I am Admiral Lisa Carter," the woman said, extending her hand in the old human gesture of greeting. "These are my colleagues, Commander Jake Morrison and Dr. Helen Brooks." Cassandra hesitated, then shook the offered hand. The human's grip was firm and warm, completely normal. Yet there was something about the touch that felt strange, as if energy was flowing between them. "You claim to be human," Cassandra said, "but humans have been extinct for 1,000 years. How is this possible?" "We evolved," Carter replied simply. "When Earth began to die, we faced a choice. We could flee to other worlds and slowly fade away, or we could become something more." "What do you mean, something more?" Carter smiled, and for a moment her form seemed to flicker. "We chose to transcend our physical limitations. We uploaded our consciousness into quantum substrates and launched ourselves into the void between galaxies." The alien crew stared at her in confusion. Dr. Quental stepped forward. "That is impossible. Consciousness cannot exist without a physical brain." "Your understanding of consciousness is limited," Dr. Brooks replied. "For 1,000 years, we existed as pure thought and energy. We grew, we learned. We became something that your science cannot yet comprehend." Commander Morrison gestured to the walls around them. "We explored dimensions you cannot perceive. We learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. We developed technology that your people might call magic." "If you are so advanced," Cassandra asked, "why have you returned? Why come back to physical form?" "Because this is our home," Carter said. "Earth is where we began. And because the galaxy needs guidance." "Guidance?" Cassandra felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of guidance?" "The kind that prevents civilizations from destroying themselves," Carter replied. "We have watched your species for 1,000 years. You have achieved peace, but at the cost of growth. You have become stagnant." "We have built a stable society," Cassandra protested. "There has been no major war in 800 years. "Yes," Carter agreed. "But there has been no real progress either, no evolution. No advancement toward something greater." The human admiral walked to the viewport and looked out at the alien fleet. "Your people fear change, they fear growth. They have chosen safety over progress. And what would you have us do?" Cassandra asked. Carter turned back to her. "Learn, grow, evolve. We offer to share our knowledge with those who are ready. And if we refuse?" "Then you remain as you are," Carter said. "We will not force change upon anyone. But we will not allow the galaxy to stagnate forever." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving reports from across the galaxy. More human ships are appearing in every sector." Carter nodded. "Our fleet is large. We have had 1,000 years to prepare for this moment." "How many ships do you have?" Cassandra asked. "Enough," Carter replied. "But numbers are not important. What matters is what we represent. And what is that?" Carter smiled again, and this time her entire form seemed to glow with inner light. "The future, Admiral. The future of all consciousness in the universe." The alien crew watched in awe and terror as the human commander began to fade, becoming translucent. "We are not bound by your physical laws," she said. "We exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We are what you could become." Then she was solid again, looking completely normal. "But that is a conversation for another time. For now, we must return to our duties." "Wait," Cassandra called out. "What happens next?" "Next," Carter replied, "we go home. We have been away from Earth for too long." The 3 humans walked back toward their ship. But instead of using the airlock, The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. The Great Assembly Hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from all 12 major species gathered around the massive circular table above them. Holographic displays showed the locations of human ships throughout the galaxy. Council leader Vexmori, an ancient being whose people had lived for thousands of years, called the meeting to order. His voice was heavy with worry. "The situation is worse than we first thought," he announced. "Human vessels have appeared in over 200 star systems. They are not attacking, but their very presence is causing panic." War Marshal Drexener of the Krillian Dominion slammed his fist on the table. "We should have destroyed them when we had the chance. Now they are everywhere, and we do not know what they want." "Perhaps we should try to understand them first," suggested Ambassador Velissa of the Peaceful Collective. "They claim to be descendants of Earth. If that is true, then they have as much right to be here as we do. Rights?" Drexener laughed bitterly. "They disappeared for 1,000 years, and now they return with technology that makes our best ships look like toys. They are a threat to everything we have built." The debate continued for hours. Some wanted war, others wanted peace. But all agreed on one thing. They needed to know more about what humanity had become. The answer came in the form of a message that appeared on every screen in the assembly hall. "The Galactic Council is invited to attend a diplomatic meeting. Aboard the UES Ascension. Come alone. Bring no weapons. We have much to discuss." The message was signed by Admiral Lisa Carter, and it included coordinates for a location just outside the solar system. The council members looked at each other with fear and curiosity. "It could be a trap," Drexener warned. "They could capture or kill us all." "If they wanted us dead," Vexmori replied, "they would not need to trick us. Their technology is clearly superior to ours." After much discussion, the council agreed to send a small delegation. Vexmori would lead the group, along with Chief Historian Quental and Ambassador Velissa. They would go unarmed, as requested, but their ship would be equipped with the most advanced recording equipment available. The journey to the meeting point took 6 hours. When they arrived, they found a single human ship waiting for them. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The hull seemed to be made of living metal that flowed like water. Strange lights moved beneath the surface in patterns that made no sense. "UES Ascension, this is the Galactic Council delegation," Vexmori transmitted. "We are here for the diplomatic meeting." "Welcome," came the reply in Admiral Carter's voice. "Please dock with Bay 7. You will be met by an escort." The alien ship attached to the human vessel, but the process was unlike anything they had experienced. Instead of mechanical docking clamps, the human ship simply absorbed their vessel into its hull. The metal flowed around them like liquid, then hardened into a perfect seal. The airlock opened and the 3 council members stepped through. They found themselves in a corridor that seemed to stretch forever in both directions. The walls were covered in symbols that moved and changed as they watched. The floor beneath their feet felt solid, but it glowed with soft light. "This way, please," said a voice behind them. They turned to see a human woman approaching. She was young-looking, with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. But there was something about her that made them uncomfortable. She moved too smoothly, as if she was floating rather than walking. "I am Lieutenant Amy Foster," she said. "I will escort you to the meeting room." As they walked, the aliens noticed that the corridors seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. Sometimes they were walking straight, but somehow they ended up going in a different direction. The human escort noticed their confusion. "Space works differently aboard our ships," she explained. "We have learned to fold dimensions, to make distances shorter. What seems like a long walk to you is actually just a few steps." They passed other humans in the corridors. All of them looked normal enough, but there was something different about them. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Their eyes held an intelligence that seemed to see through everything. Finally, they reached a large chamber with a round table in the center. Admiral Carter was waiting for them, along with 2 other humans. The Admiral looked exactly as she had before, but the other 2 were new. Welcome to the Ascension, Carter said, gesturing for them to sit. Allow me to introduce my colleagues. This is Commander Jake Morrison, our Chief Scientist, and Dr. Helen Brooks, our Chief Medical Officer. The aliens took their seats carefully. The chairs seemed to adjust automatically to fit their different body types. Vexmori noticed that the table was made of the same flowing metal as the ship's hull. You promised us answers, Vexmori said. We want to know what happened to humanity. How did you survive? How did you develop this technology? Carter smiled. The story is long, but I will tell you what you need to know. When Earth began to die, we faced a choice. We could flee to other worlds and slowly fade away, or we could find a different path. What kind of path? Asked Chief Historian Quental. The path of evolution, replied Commander Morrison. We discovered that consciousness is not bound by physical matter. The mind, the soul, the essence of what makes us human, these things can exist without a body. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. Using technology we developed in our final years on Earth, we uploaded our consciousness into quantum substrates. We became beings of pure thought and energy. That is impossible, Quental protested. Consciousness requires a brain, a physical structure. Your understanding of consciousness is limited, Morrison replied. You see the brain as the source of thought, but it is only a tool. The real consciousness exists in the quantum fields that connect all matter. Carter stood and walked to the center of the room. For 1,000 years we existed in the void. Between galaxies, we had no physical form, no bodies, no ships. We were pure thought, exploring dimensions that your science cannot even detect. What did you do during those 1,000 years? Velissa asked. We grew, Carter replied. We learned. We explored the fundamental forces of reality. We discovered truths about the universe that no physical being could ever understand. Morrison gestured to the walls around them. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. We can create and destroy with a thought. We can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Show us, Drexenor demanded. Speaking for the first time since they had arrived, Morrison smiled and held up his hand. The air above his palm began to shimmer. Slowly, a complex structure formed from nothing. It was a perfect crystal, but as they watched, it changed shape, becoming a flower, then a bird, then a miniature star that glowed with real light. Matter is just energy arranged in patterns, Morrison explained. When you understand the patterns, you can rearrange them at will. Dr. Brooks stood and walked to Quental. May I? She asked, extending her hand. Quental hesitated, then allowed the human to touch his arm. Brooks closed her eyes and concentrated. Quental gasped as he felt something happening inside his body. Pain that he had carried for years suddenly vanished. His vision became clearer. He felt stronger than he had in decades. What did you do? He asked in wonder. I repaired the damage in your cells, Brooks replied. I eliminated the toxins that were causing your pain. I restored your body to its optimal state. How is that possible? When you can manipulate matter at the quantum level, healing becomes simple. Disease, aging, even death, these are just patterns that can be changed. Vexmori leaned back in his chair. So you are saying that you have conquered death itself? Death is a choice for us now, Carter replied. We can take physical form when we wish or exist as pure energy. We can live forever, or we can choose. To end our existence, we have become masters of our own fate. But why return now? Velissa asked. Why take physical form again? Carter looked sad for a moment. Because we are lonely. For 1,000 years we have existed as gods, but we have had no one to share our knowledge with. We have watched civilizations rise and fall, but we could not interact with them. And now you can? Now we have learned to exist in both forms, Morrison explained. We can be energy beings when we choose or take physical form when we need to interact with others. We have returned because the galaxy needs guidance, Carter continued. We have watched your species for 1,000 years. You have achieved peace, but at the cost of growth. You have become afraid to change, afraid to evolve. What do you mean? Vexmori asked. Dr. Brooks answered. Look at your technology. It has barely advanced in the last 500 years. Look at your societies. They are the same as they were centuries ago. You have chosen safety over progress. And that is wrong? Velissa asked. Not wrong, Carter replied, but limiting. Life is meant to grow, to change, to become something greater. When you stop growing, you begin to die. So what do you want from us? Vex Mori asked. We want to share our knowledge, Carter said. We want to help you evolve, to become something more than you are now. And if we refuse, Carter shrugged, then you remain as you are. We will not force change upon anyone. But we will not allow the galaxy to stagnate forever. Morrison stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, they could see stars stretching. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so divided. For 3 days, representatives from 12 species argued about humanity's return. Some wanted to accept the humans' offer of evolution, others demanded war. The debate grew more heated. With each passing hour, War Marshal Drexenor paced around the chamber like a caged animal. His gray skin was flushed with anger, and his sharp teeth were bared. They are a threat to everything we have built, he declared. For 1,000 years, we have ruled this galaxy in peace. Now these humans return and demand that we change our entire way of life. They are not demanding anything, Ambassador Velissa replied calmly. They are offering to share their knowledge. There is a difference, offering? Drexenor laughed. Bitterly. You saw their power. They can walk through walls. They can create matter from nothing. They can heal with a touch. Do you really think we have a choice? Council leader Vex Mori raised his hand for silence. The question before us is simple, he said. Do we trust them or do we fight them? How can we trust beings who claim to be gods? Asked Senator Krylock of the Mining Consortium. They say they can live forever, that they exist in multiple dimensions. Such power corrupts. It always has, but what if they are telling the truth? Countered Dr. Yelana, who had been part of the original expedition to Earth. What if they really want to help us? Help us become what? Drexenor demanded. Slaves? Puppets? They talk about evolution, but evolution for whom? For us or for them? The debate was interrupted by an alert from the communications center. Council leader, the officer called out, we are receiving a transmission. It is being broadcast on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Put it on the main screen, Vex_Mori ordered. The screen lit up, showing the face of Admiral Lisa Carter. Behind her was the bridge of her ship, with other humans working at stations that seemed to be made of living light. People of the galaxy, Carter began, we know that our return has caused fear and confusion. This was not our intention. We come in peace, offering knowledge and friendship to all who will accept it. The transmission continued for several minutes. Carter explained humanity's goals, their desire to share their technology, and their respect for those who chose to remain unchanged. Her words were calm and reasonable, but they did little to ease the tension in the council chamber. When the transmission ended, Drexenor stood up slowly. Pretty words, he said. But words are cheap. Actions matter more. What are you suggesting? Vex_Mori asked, though he already knew the answer. I'm suggesting that we test their claims, Drexenor replied. They say they come in peace. They say they will not force change upon us? Let us see if that is true. You want to attack them? Vel_Asa asked in horror. I want to probe their defenses, Drexenor corrected. A small strike just to see how they respond. If they are truly peaceful, they will defend themselves without striking back. If they are lying, then we will know their true nature. The council erupted in arguments. Half the members supported the idea, believing that they needed to know what they were dealing with. The other half opposed it, fearing that any attack would start a war they could not win. In the end, Vex_Mori cast the deciding vote. A limited probe, he agreed. But only a small force and only defensive weapons. We will test their response, nothing more. 3 hours later, War Marshal Drexenor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Krylia. Around him, 50 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy waited for his orders. Each ship was equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire moons. "Target the largest human vessel," Drexenor commanded. "Weapons set to minimum power. This is a probe, not an assault." The human fleet was positioned near Earth, apparently, studying their old homeworld. There were hundreds of human ships, but they showed no signs of defensive formations. They simply floated in space as if they had no fear of attack. "All ships, fire when ready," Drexenor ordered. 50 ships fired. At once, energy beams and plasma bolts streaked through space toward the human fleet. The weapons were set to low power, enough to disable but not destroy. It should have been a clear demonstration of galactic military might, instead something impossible happened. The weapons passed right through the human ships as if they were not there. The energy beams and plasma bolts continued on into empty space, striking nothing. The human vessels remained exactly where they were, completely unharmed. "What happened?" Drexenor demanded. "Why did our weapons not hit?" "I do not know, sir," his weapons officer replied. "The targeting systems showed direct hits, but the weapons passed through the targets without effect." "Are the humans using some kind of shield technology?" "No, sir. There are no energy readings consistent with defensive shields. It is as if the ships are not really there." Drexenor stared at the screen in confusion. How could ships be there and not there at the same time? How could they exist in physical space but not be affected by physical weapons? The answer came in the form of a voice that spoke directly into his mind. Not through the ship's communication systems, but inside his own thoughts. "War Marshal Drexenor," the voice said calmly. It was Admiral Carter, but she was speaking without any technology at all. "Your test has been noted. Now allow us to demonstrate our capabilities." "How are you speaking to me?" Drexenor asked aloud. "Consciousness is not limited by distance or technology," Carter's voice replied inside his head. "We exist in dimensions you cannot perceive. Your weapons cannot harm us because we choose not to be harmed." Suddenly, every ship in Drexenor's fleet stopped moving. Not just the engines, but everything. The ships hung motionless in space, completely frozen. Inside each vessel, the crew found themselves unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything except think. "What have you done to us?" Drexenor demanded, though the words existed only in his mind. "We have temporarily removed your ability to perceive three-dimensional space," Carter explained. "You exist, but not in the way you understand existence. Do not worry, the effect is not permanent." Drexenor tried to move, but his body would not respond. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Around him, his crew sat frozen at their stations, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. "This is what power truly means," Carter continued. "We do not need weapons to defend ourselves. We do not need to destroy our enemies. We simply remove their ability to threaten us." "You are making us your prisoners," Drexenor thought angrily. "No," Carter replied. "We are teaching you. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your numbers mean nothing to us. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. If we wished you harm, you would already be dead." For what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the alien fleet remained frozen in space. During that time, Drexenor experienced something he had never felt before: complete helplessness. He was a warrior, trained to fight and conquer. But how do you fight an enemy that exists partially outside reality? Then suddenly everything returned to normal. The ships could move again, the crew could speak. But the lesson had been learned. "We hope this demonstration has answered your questions," Carter's voice said, now coming through the ship's communication system instead of directly into their minds. "We do not wish to be your enemies, but we will not allow ourselves to be threatened." The alien fleet retreated to a safe distance. Drexenor sat in his command chair, staring at the human ships with new understanding. They were not just technologically superior. They were something entirely different, something that operated by rules he could not comprehend. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving reports from across the galaxy. Every electronic system everywhere is displaying the same message." "What message?" Drexenor asked. We do not seek conflict, but we will not tolerate aggression. The words appeared on every screen, every display, every piece of electronic equipment in the galaxy. From the smallest personal communicator to the largest space station computer, the message was everywhere. The humans had somehow accessed every electronic system in known space simultaneously. How is that possible? Drexener whispered. When you exist in multiple dimensions, came Carter's voice, distance becomes meaningless. Every computer, every electronic device, every piece of technology in this galaxy is connected through quantum fields that we can perceive and manipulate. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just demonstrated their defensive capabilities. They had shown that they could take control of every piece of technology in the galaxy if they chose to. No communication would be private. No computer would be secure. No weapon would function without their permission. We could have done this at any time during the past 1,000 years, Carter continued. We chose not to because we respect your right to develop on your own, but we will not allow that respect to be mistaken for weakness. The message remained on every screen for exactly 1 hour, then vanished. But the lesson was clear to everyone in the galaxy. Humanity had returned, with power beyond imagination. They claimed to come in peace, and after this demonstration, most people believed them. After all, beings with such power would not need to lie about their intentions. In the Galactic Council chamber, the debate was over. War Marshal Drexener stood before the assembly, his pride broken but his honesty intact. We cannot fight them, he announced. Our weapons are useless. Our technology is primitive. 5 years had passed since humanity's return to the galaxy. The Great Council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, but the atmosphere was very different from the fearful meetings of the past, where once there had been arguments and suspicion. Now there was hope and excitement. President Alex Morgan of the reformed Terran Republic stood at the center of the chamber. He was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair. Unlike the military leaders who had first made contact, Morgan was a diplomat and philosopher. He had been chosen to lead humanity's civilian government. Friends, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. We gather today to celebrate the 5th anniversary of our reunion. 5 years ago, many of you feared us. Today, we work together toward a brighter future. The chamber erupted in applause from species that had once considered humanity extinct. In the front row sat Dr. Yelena, the scientist who had first discovered the energy readings on Earth. She looked younger than she had 5 years ago, thanks to human medical technology that had extended her lifespan by centuries. The changes we have seen are remarkable, Morgan continued, but they are only the beginning. Today we announce the next phase of our partnership. Behind him, a holographic display showed the galaxy as it was now. Green dots marked worlds where alien species had chosen to undergo guided evolution. Yellow dots showed neutral territories where species remained unchanged but maintained friendly relations with humanity. Red dots marked a few isolated systems where hostile species still rejected any contact. The zones of influence have been successful beyond our greatest hopes, Morgan said. 17 species have chosen to begin the evolutionary journey. 3 have already completed their first transformation. In the audience, Ambassador Valissa of the Peaceful Collective smiled proudly. Her people had been among the first to accept humanity's offer. The changes in her species were visible to everyone. They had grown taller, stronger, and more intelligent. Their lifespan had increased from 100 years to over 1,000. Most importantly, they had developed the ability to communicate through thought alone. The Ethereal Collective has made the most progress, Morgan announced. They have successfully transcended their need for physical bodies and can now exist as pure energy when they choose. Representative Zanara of the Ethereal Collective stood to acknowledge the recognition. But as she stood, her body became translucent, then disappeared entirely. Only her voice remained, speaking from the air itself. We thank humanity for showing us the path, Zanara's voice said. We have learned to exist in multiple dimensions, to see the universe as it truly is. But we have also learned the importance of choice. Not all of our people have chosen this path, and that is acceptable. It was true. The evolutionary process was always voluntary. No one was forced to change. Families often had some members who chose evolution while others remained in their original form. The humans had made it clear that both choices were equally valid. The process has not been without challenges, Morgan admitted. Change is never easy. But we have learned much from each other. Dr. Karen White, humanity's chief evolutionary biologist, stepped forward. She was a small woman with red hair and bright green eyes. In her hands she carried a simple metal device that glowed with soft blue light. "This is the evolution matrix," she explained. "It allows us to guide the transformation process safely. Each species evolves differently, according to their own nature and desires." She gestured to the audience, where several evolved beings sat among their unchanged relatives. Commander Thexus of the Krillian military chose to enhance his physical capabilities. He is now stronger and faster than any natural Krillian, but he remains essentially unchanged in personality and beliefs. Thexus stood and nodded to the assembly. He looked similar to his old self, but there was something different about him. His movements were more graceful, his eyes more alert. When he spoke, his voice carried a confidence that had not been there. "Before, the humans did not change who I am," he said. "They helped me become the best version of myself. I am still a warrior, still proud of my heritage. But now I can protect my people in ways I never imagined." Dr. Quental chose a different path, Dr. White continued. He focused on intellectual enhancement. His memory is now perfect, his analytical abilities increased 100-fold. The old historian stood slowly. His body looked frail, but his eyes burned with intelligence. "I have read every book, every document, every piece of recorded knowledge in the galaxy," he said. "But more than that, I understand it all. I can see patterns and connections that were invisible to me before." "And yet," Morgan added, "both of these individuals remain themselves. Evolution does not erase who you are. It reveals who you were meant to become." Not everyone in the galaxy had embraced these changes. War Marshal Drexenor, despite his earlier acceptance of humanity's power, had chosen to remain unchanged. His people, the Krillian Dominion, were split between those who sought evolution and those who valued their traditional ways. "We respect all choices," Morgan said, as if reading the concerns in the room. "The galaxy is vast enough for many different ways of life. We seek only to offer possibilities, not to impose them." The meeting was interrupted by an alert from the communications center. A technician rushed to President Morgan's side and whispered urgently in his ear. Morgan's expression grew serious. "Friends," he announced, "we have just received a signal from beyond our galaxy. It appears we are not alone in our evolution." The chamber fell silent. A new holographic display appeared, showing the vast emptiness between galaxies, but the emptiness was not complete. Distant lights flickered in the void, organized in patterns that suggested intelligence. Admiral Lisa Carter materialized beside Morgan. She had been elsewhere in the galaxy, but distance meant little to evolved humans. "The signal is from the Andromeda Galaxy," she reported. "We are detecting at least 12 distinct consciousness patterns. They are requesting contact. Are they friendly?" asked Council Leader Vex Mori. "Unknown," Carter replied. "But they are broadcasting mathematical sequences that suggest peaceful intent. They appear to be offering knowledge exchange." Dr. Karen White studied the readings on her instruments. "These consciousness patterns are unlike anything we have encountered. They appear to exist in at least 7 dimensions simultaneously. More advanced than us?" Morgan asked. "Different," White corrected. "They have chosen a path of pure mental evolution, no physical forms at all. They are beings of thought and mathematics." The implications were staggering. Humanity's return to the galaxy had been just the beginning. There were other evolved species throughout the universe, each following their own path toward transcendence. "What do they want?" Velissa asked. Carter smiled. The same thing we wanted when we returned, to share knowledge, to learn from others, to grow together. Over the following hours, the first intergalactic communication in the history of known civilization took place. The beings from Andromeda shared their knowledge of pure consciousness evolution. In return, humanity shared their discoveries about dimensional manipulation and matter control. The exchange revealed that the universe was full of evolved species, each having found their own way to transcend their original limitations. Some, like humanity, maintained physical forms. Others, like the Andromedans, existed as pure thought. Still, others had become beings of energy or had learned to manipulate time itself. "We are part of something much larger," Morgan announced. "To the galaxy. The universe itself is evolving, reaching towards some greater purpose that we are only beginning to understand." The news spread quickly throughout galactic civilization. Some species saw it as an opportunity for even greater advancement. Others felt overwhelmed by the vastness of what lay ahead, on Earth, which had been restored to its former beauty and beyond. Children from dozens of species played together in the rebuilt Central Park. Some were baseline aliens, others were beginning their evolutionary journey, and a few were newly transcended beings learning to exist in multiple dimensions. Admiral Carter stood watching them, remembering the dead world that Earth had been when humanity first departed. Now it was alive again, not just with restored nature, but with the hopes and dreams of countless species. "Admiral," came a voice behind her. She turned to see a young human boy, one of the first to be born since the return. His name was Ben Parker, and he represented something new, humanity's next generation, born with abilities that would have seemed impossible to their ancestors. "Yes, Ben?" she asked. "My teacher says that there are other universes beyond ours. Is that true?" Carter smiled. "Yes, Ben, there are infinite universes, infinite possibilities, and someday you and your generation will explore them all." The boy's eyes lit up with excitement. "Will I be able to visit them?" "If you choose to," Carter replied. "The universe is vast and full of wonders. But remember, the greatest journey is not to distant places, but to become the best version of yourself." As the sun set over Earth, casting long shadows across the restored landscape, Carter received a communication from deep space. More signals were arriving from the void between universes. Other realities, other dimensions of existence, all reaching out to make contact. Humanity's return to the galaxy had been just the first step.